Hi there, I'm Dr. Andy Toy, and on this podcast, I'm going to show you how you can use your time to reach a much higher level of practice. And you do that by using your team.
orthomarketing.com, 360-degree digital marketing solutions for your practice.
Well, hello, everybody in podcast land. This is Dean Steinman from Ortho Marketing, and we are back with another podcast for you. It is now into March 2023. Spring is around the corner, but right around the corner here in lovely New York. Buds are coming up. It's everybody smiling and happy, and I am super happy today to have a very special guest with me. I have Dr. Andy Toy. Dr. Toy is from over the pond, as they say, from here in the States, a leader, godfather in this industry, and I'm so excited to have him join us to talk a little bit about, some trends and tips for you to do in your practice in order to be more efficient, more effective, and to take your practice to the next level. So, Andy, thanks so much. How are you today?
I'm very well, Dean. Thanks. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
My pleasure.
Spring has sprung here in in UK, so we have daffodils and catkins and all sorts coming out.
Well, as they say, they don't say enough in the States, but brilliant. You can throw brilliant out as much as you want, and even wanker if you want. I don't care. We don't hear that enough here in the States. So
my language then. That's
that's cool. No worries. So, Andy, thanks so much again for joining us. So, let's just jump in. You got a very interesting story. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? You're a trained dentist, and and what made you get into the consulting education business versus just keep track and making people smile and get straighter teeth?
Well, that's a good question. I think probably because I'm not that good a dentist, Dean. So no, those who can do and those who can't teach. Have you ever heard of that one?
I sure have, yeah.
So but actually no, I was very fortunate and very early on in my career, I got into supporting young dentists. We have a sort of training scheme in the UK here. I got involved with that and I found I really enjoyed it and people seemed to like what I was doing. So that started me off on the education pathway way back in 1987. I also did a master's in clinical education in 1996 to 99. I was the first general dentist to do that. And that led me from being a technician in the education world to being a strategist, to really understanding how people learn and professionals learn in particular. And the other thing I think that comes into that is I've always really loved working in teams. And I think if I got back to one thing, why did I go into dentistry and not medicine or pharmacy? It was really this whole team thing.
Okay.
And therefore, if you want to work in a team, you want to bring on the people in the team. I suppose I'm fundamentally lazy as well, so it's much better for me and for other people who are doing the work in the practice that I am. And in fact, I don't know if you know, but I went to the Pankey Institute way back in 1982, and I was probably the youngest delegate they'd ever had because I was only 22. And I remember meeting some guys from Canada, actually, and they had these massive practices with therapists and all sorts going on. That really got me opened my eyes to what a single dentist could do with a big team that was well trained. So all those things sort of tie in together. Then the other thing that interested him, if one thing I was quite good at was orthodontics.
Okay.
So I did orthodontics right from day one in general practice. We had 3 years of undergraduate training with it. It was all removable stuff, like a Skip Truitt type approach. You're probably aware of him. I couldn't bend a wire to save my life.
Okay.
I couldn't do fixed braces in those days, but then in the late 80s, early 90s, straight wire comes in where the wire is not straight, it's already bent, as you know.
Right.
So that allowed me into getting into using fixed braces. That expanded my career in that respect. And then they brought out this thing called Invisalign. Okay. And you remember that advert holding up that clear aligner, that bit of plastic? Sure. This plastic moves teeth. I thought, what a load of rubbish that is. How on earth can plastic move teeth? So I ignored it for several years. After you've been in work for a while, you become a bit of a cynic. Sure. I want to see something proven because I've had enough products proven on my patients that failed. So anyway, 5 or 6 years later, it's still there. I'm a bit bored, I'll be honest with you, because my practice is going really well. I've got loads of healthy patients paying me loads of money. So I get into Invisalign. I love the ClinCheck. And it allowed me then, I found that I was able to, well, patients would accept Invisalign where they weren't accepting braces. So one of the things we learned at the Pancake Institute was a whole comprehensive approach to the patient. You know, you should give them the option, and if alignment of the teeth would mean that outcome would be better, you should tell them that. So you'd say, you know what, Mrs. Jones, if I straighten these teeth, you wouldn't need a crown here, you probably need a veneer, or you wouldn't need a veneer, you'd need some bonding, or you wouldn't need a bridge, you'd need an implant. And Mrs. Jones would say, that would great. What do? I say, I'll give you these fixed braces. Mrs. Jones would always say no. When I showed Mrs. Jones a piece of plastic, she would say yes.
Yes.
So because of Invisalign, suddenly my practice world expanded again, and it, became a lot more rewarding.
Okay.
And in those days, Invisalign wasn't that good, actually. But in 2010, they brought out the new Invisalign. They've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in it. And that really took off then. And I was very excited by it. And locally then in the UK, I was doing a fair number of cases by then. And as you can tell, I can speak. And so they took me on as a speaker in 2010. And it's really grown from there. And as I've got older, my eyes have got worse. Physically, and I'm a bit, I couldn't do fixed braces now, even if I wanted to, because I can't see it properly. But my practice in life has reduced, and then my teaching and consultancy has increased. So I'm really using that master's in clinical education now.
Interesting, great story. So, it's funny how many of my guests started off as practitioners and put the entrepreneur hat on.
Right.
So many of them, and I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life, and I always respect people that get out of their lane and take a chance. So my hat off to you, me for doing that. That's great. So now let's talk a little bit about the orthodontic industry in general. What would you say is the number one pain that a practice has that comes to you for their consultation, for consulting with them with the practice and helping them out? What's the number one thing that a practice has issues with or just needs help with that is trending right now in 2023?
I think the biggest thing is time.
Okay.
The dentist time.
Dentist time, okay.
And that ties in with the biggest fear they have, actually, is one of risk of being sued or being brought up in front of the regulator, the General Dental Council.
Yeah.
Because in the UK, we're twice as likely to be sued as you are in the US.
Really?
Okay.
And for what? Just for, incompetency, for getting my teeth not straight? Why would somebody instigate a suit?
Well, the biggest single reason is the patient's not being consented properly. So they do not receive the result they were expecting, or the process was not what they expected. And when you've got ambulance chasing lawyers as well, and a regulator that's become very consumer orientated and hates the dentist, those things have come together, and dentists lose sleep at night. However, for me, this consent process is a massive opportunity. So we have to do it.
Okay.
How can we create that and change that threat into an opportunity?
Okay.
Because the reason that patients are going down this route is because they have anxieties and their expectations have not been met or not been managed. If you create this opportunity, if you really concentrate on the consent process, you'll have patients who actually feel more comfortable, feel more relaxed, more at ease, and they're your friend, and they understand when things don't go perfectly well, because it's a human being, and and biology, and nothing's 100% predictable. So I really got into what some people call the patient journey, and I realized that actually really, really good consent is also really, really good ethical sales.
What do you mean by consent? Expand on that, please.
So consent is where the patient is allowed to make makes a decision on the treatment they should have, and they should understand, they should know what's going to happen, they should have the time to consider it, and they should understand the consequences.
Oh, okay.
So that's a legal term, consent, and dentists are really defensive about it.
Okay.
When they get defensive about it, they're really anxious. The patient's already anxious, and the patient doesn't trust the dentist, and the dentist doesn't trust the patient.
Interesting. From my perspective, there's a term in my industry called social proof.
Okay.
Which means you could say to the crows come home how great you are, but if your patients say how great you are, that's the difference makers. People want to hear from their colleagues or their peers versus you as a company,
right?
Dentist. So when it comes to something like the consent, this is something which I believe is very important, is to, in the practice, to have some sort of patient information or education for them to educate their peers. Absolutely. How great you are. And the more people who say how great this practice is, and they gave me the smile they want, and my teeth are, have never been better, will then probably give people more faith in believing in a practice and being all in and not having any doubts in their mind, because 500 people on Google said how great this practice is.
Right.
And that's important. So when you said time at the very beginning, what do you mean by that? Because you went from time to consent to legal to stressing out. So what do you mean by time?
Okay, so that if the patients, you have to work with the patient wherever they're at, whatever personality type they're at. And Dr. Pankey has a great saying, never treat a stranger, only treat a friend. Okay, so if you see this individual come in and for you it's just straightening their teeth, you're only concentrating on the teeth, what that individual wants is for you to concentrate on them, right? And consent is a trusting relationship. Now, relationships take time. However, from the patient's point of view, they are buying the dentist, but really what they're doing is buying the practice.
Okay.
We train up an individual called a treatment coordinator who becomes, if you like, the patient's advocate, the patient's friend within the practice. So they're the first person that the patient will meet. And the treatment coordinator is trained to understand what consent and ethical sales is. So they're not there to, sell braces. They're there to build a trusting relationship with the patient. Find out all about the patient, what the patient's wants are, but also what their needs are. What are they like in terms of personality, and then deal with them at whatever level of anxiety they have. Then help them understand what the practice can offer, and also, of course, build up the dentist. Dr. Toy is amazing because blah, 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 whatever it is.
Right.
But that all takes time. And the dentist, even if they had the time, the patient doesn't believe they have the time. So the patient isn't going to tell them lots of things, is not going to really listen to what they say, because the dentist is probably doing a data overload anyway, because they've got to get all this information out. They've only got 20 minutes. Whereas, Donna, my TCO, my treatment coordinator, she's paid to listen to the patient, spend time with the patient, build that relationship, and then the consent process or the ethical sales process is actually an educational process. And drip, drip, drip in the information that the patient needs to know and manage their expectations. Understand we can't produce miracles, right? And the patient, when they have this trusting relationship, will accept that. And it was amazing to me. I first started this in 1986. I won't tell you the whole story of that first consultation, but basically the patient already had half an hour in the practice. I come in, I've spent 2 minutes with the patient, and she turns to me, she says, "No dentist has ever listened to me like this." I'd been there 2 minutes.
Right.
But because the treatment coordinator had spent the time, the patient sees the whole practice.
Right.
That's you.
It's interesting when I do marketing and positioning and branding, in my eyes, there's 5 letters of the gospel, and if nobody gets it, and that's WIIFM.
Okay.
What's in it for me?
Okay.
Not how great you are as practices. What does the patient need? What's going to make them happy? Why should they be there? Not we will do this or we will do this with this. You will get, and nobody, and 99% of people who are in sales, or when everybody is in a sales position one way or the other, doesn't understand that.
Yes.
And it's real important for them to know how to position the practice and to listen. And when you say that, it's music to my ears,
right?
Because so many people don't listen. They have their blinders on. They're in their lane and they don't know how to get out of it,
right?
And it'll be a people person,
right?
So it's great. So what's one tip you can give somebody to listen to this today to stop what they're doing and listen to themselves right now, what they're saying to a patient, and are they listening? Because people think they're listening, but they're not. Should they be, record themselves a couple of times and see? Because you don't know what you're doing unless you see it or hear it, So what's one tip you should give somebody today? So say a doctor sees 10 new patients today, busy day.
Yes.
How are they even knowing if they're listening?
Yes. So I would ask the dental assistant,
okay,
to just do an audit, record how many minutes is the patient speaking and how many minutes is the dentist speaking. Right?
And be brutally honest. You got to tell the patient, you tell your assistant or TC, for early in the day, Mary, whatever it is, do that for me today. Just take a little notepad and write on each patient, clock it. Tell me how much am I speaking? How much are they speaking?
Right. Right.
And if you do that and you just analyze it later and then you learn from what you did,
yeah,
I'm sure you'll see crazy amount of results and starts and from people who come in, because in the States, the average success rate is about 60% of people who come in who are ready, to start. Will start. 60 is not that great of a number. I've seen practices in 10, 15%. I've seen practices in 90%.
Yeah,
nobody's at 100. But I'm sure if they listen, you'll see that 60 perk up to 65, 70, 75, because it shows you care. But it can't be window dressing. Gotta care too.
Absolutely. So, how about this one then?
The
patient will not understand until they feel understood. So why?
I'm writing these quotes down. That's a good one.
The patient will not understand until they feel understood. So why is the dentist telling them stuff? Because they won't understand it until they feel they've made that connection with the dentist.
Oh.
Or in my terms, with the practice, because I would get Donna to do so much of that.
Sure, right.
Right?
And think about it, during a patient's journey, especially if they're doing Invisalign or orthodontics, they don't see, your staff is taking over 90% of the face time with the patient. You want to make sure it's getting done, just check in, you say hello. Your team is important. So how do we flip it around then? How does a doctor make sure that his staff is listening and letting the patient talk as well? So it works two ways. So what would you suggest somebody do that way? So initially you said, the staff should hear the doctor, but doctor doesn't have the time to listen to the staff. So what they do, team up? Or how would you suggest to train your team?
I think one of the mistakes that dentists have is, one of the mistakes that dentists make is they don't, certainly in the UK anyway, the sort of people we get as team members in the UK, they do not learn in the same way as dentists.
Sure. They don't need to. Right.
Be confident, they have status, and to a degree, I don't know if I can say this, but they'll bullshit. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I do.
You can say that.
Right.
I'm from New York. We eat that for breakfast.
So, they will dive in and they'll have a go. And anyway, they've just got to tell these patients loads of things. A team member will struggle to do that. They don't like doing that. They do it. Because we're asking them to take a patient and be in a room and be responsible for that patient on their own. Okay. And the team member wants to make sure they do it right. And if they're not sure they're doing it right, they'd rather do nothing. So they do need some training.
Okay.
Now, if you have a team member who's been with you a while and they know a lot about, say, Invisalign, and they know you and they trust you, obviously, and they're more mature and they're genuinely interested in people, they're probably halfway there.
Okay.
But they do need to, the dentist needs to appreciate what a challenge it is for them and not just throw them in and then, complain when they don't get it right. It needs a bit of time and effort.
I think 2 last questions for you. One is, how do you get a team member who's been there for a while to adapt? Because they're stuck in their ways. She's been with you for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Checks in, checks out. I'm using that, stay in your lane blinders thing, but they don't get it. So how do you get them to change? Because change is the hardest thing anybody could do.
Yeah.
So, what would you suggest it would be the best way to get a team member to actually adapt to the change that's necessary in order to keep the practice successful?
I mean, to get out of their comfort zone, basically. Well,
right. How do you do that?
I always come back to, and that's hard, isn't it? Because,
Sure is.
When you know that saying, I don't know what I don't know, and then I know what I don't know, that's very, very uncomfortable.
Sure.
Basically. And I've loads of Invisalign dentists, young Invisalign dentists like that, and that's one of the reasons they don't do more Invisalign. We've got to get them through to, I know what I know, right? Anyway, it's the same thing with a team member. So the first thing I would always go back to in terms of any practice or business development is, what are the values of the practice? Why are we here? And one of the great things that every team member wants to do, they want to do the best for the patient.
Hope so, right?
So we want to do the best for the patient. And we recognize that actually our relationship building with the patient is not as good as it could be. How could we get better relationships with the patients so that they are far more likely to take on the other value that we have, which is the best chance of having long-term oral health, keeping their teeth healthy for the rest of their lives with a great smile, not wearing them out, not having joint issues, not having perio issues. We can all agree to that, right? And a team member generally will do that. So that's where you're starting from. And you say, well, I recognize actually from a patient's point of view, they're actually better spending time with a trained patient's friend, if you like, than they are with me.
Sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and they relate really well to a dental assistant. How often do they turn to the dental assistant when the dentist got out of the room and says, what did he say?
Right.
That's it, right?
Okay. Sure.
So, you could use this team member being with me 15 to 20 years. You have this experience. You are talented. We could give you a whole new chapter where you could really, really help patients get the best chance of keeping their teeth for life.
Great.
Because instead of just passing me stuff and writing my notes and bringing the patient in, which is all very skilled, you've got all that talent that's there, and we can just help you, get to this higher level of practice, and you will help the patient, you'll help me, and you'll help yourself as well. And they should be paid accordingly.
Sure.
On that responsibility and the extra training, things like that.
Right.
I don't know what it's like in the States, so we got real trouble, keeping people in the dental team. So
every one of my clients, I work with about 100 practices here in the States, and some in Europe as well. And I would say 95% of them have staffing issues, and it's not even money. They'll pay whatever they want. Hey. Just finding the right people who care. That's the thing. People who care and get it and show up for work. People, get hired and they don't show up. It's incredible how many the overturn of staff. People, if I had to do this over again, I would be a headhunter in this industry, because everybody needs needs good people, 100%.
And, especially and the younger generations, they want to feel like they're doing good. Well, this is
sure.
We are achieving a higher level of practice here as a team. We could do as individuals, and here are our values.
Right. Exactly.
We always go back to values. That's
always. Yep. What makes you stand out there? Andy, got 2 final questions for you. One is, if somebody who's listening wants to get more information from you, say hello, talk a little bit about what you do, how you can help them, what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you?
You can get me on Instagram, but probably an email would be a good start, actually.
Okay.
So that's info@drandytoy.co.uk, DRANDYTOY.co.uk. That will be a great start.
Okay.
And we can fix up a Zoom or whatever it is.
Great.
There we go.
And the most important question, and I don't know if you saw a text come through in the last 10 minutes or so, but I just saw that an asteroid is hitting Earth in about 6 hours.
Oh, right.
So now it's time for you to make your last meal. Okay. What's Andy's last meal? Okay, before the Earth explodes.
I'm famous for eating curry.
Okay. What is it?
Curry, Indian
curry. Really? Okay. So curry is it, huh? Okay.
Absolutely, yes. And if you wanted, do you want one curry? It'll be
and spicy? How spicy do you go?
Yeah, quite spicy. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So curry it is. Excellent, Paul. Andy, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. This was great, guys. Hopefully you learned some great tips in here. And some great quotes too. Never treat a stranger, always treat a friend.
Yeah.
Love that. And a patient will not understand until they're understood.
Until
that's great, until they feel like they're understood. So that's terrific. So thanks so much, and I appreciate it. Everybody in podcast land, thanks so much for listening. Be happy. Be sure to smile today. And, life is short. So make sure to smile, smile, smile. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
orthomarketing.com. 360-degree digital marketing solutions for your practice.